for today, I was gonna give a scientific presentation, and I showed my presentation to Dr. Mathee, and she was very proactive and gave me, instead of saying, no, I don't like that, she told me, no, I will present, don't worry about it, I will give them the presentation. So I gave my time to her, for her to give you an overview how to give a scientific presentation and a poster, how to prepare the poster, which is one of both are required for your, at the end of the program, you're required to have both a poster and a presentation. So make sure you take notes and you learn, and we're also gonna share the presentation with all of you at the end of the session. I would like to also remind everyone that we will be meeting this afternoon, and the faculty is also invited. We'll be meeting at 4. You're gonna hear a little bit about research in my laboratory, and I'll still give a little bit of overview of the presentation I showed Dr. Mathee, and also we'll give the opportunity to graduate students within our college to present their current projects. So with that being said, I would like to let Dr. Mathee take over and present. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agudelo. Good afternoon to everyone. And I just want to confirm, I do have 2 hours, right? It's 1 to 3?
Yes. Yes, you have 1 to 3. Yeah.
Perfect. And let me know when I should break. Okay. So did everyone get the feedback form? Okay, hopefully you filled out the question number 1 for the feedback form, right? Okay, so I may call on your names to say something. So when I call your name, please do respond. And Dr. Agudelo and Marsha, please turn your speaker off. That'd be great. Okay. And also, Marisa, Dr. Agudelo, do monitor any questions on the chat. Do post your questions on the chat so that, you know, Dr. Agudelo can look at it and summarize for me when we break or when we end, either ways. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the presentation. And basically, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're in a science or arts, medicine, it doesn't matter. You have, if you're going to go and present in front of public, you got to make sure that you bring the best self of you, because whatever you put there represents you, and if you're with a mentor, it represents the mentor. So I'm very particular about the presentation. The proof is in the pudding. I can tell you that many of my undergraduates and graduate students always win. If they compete, they win the awards for the best presentation. So some students don't like that, but you know, I take a lot of effort in making sure all the students do their best. All right, so this is some of the common mistakes people make. Joel, can you tell me what's wrong with this slide?
I'm sorry, you called on me?
Yes, what's wrong with this slide?
Well, for one, taking up like 30% of the page. So you could probably expand and make it bigger, the text.
Okay. So that's a very good point, because what you have is the ghost space all around here. Right? And so one thing that I must say is that the presentation for Zoom meeting is a little bit more forgiving than the meetings when you present in a large crowd. Because in a large crowd, you have to have the slides better than the Zoom meeting. So anyhow, what I have here is for a large crowd, okay? So what are the comments? So this is how now if I take this slide and blow it up, make the font large, and I fill up the slide. There's no more ghost space. So really, you know, what are the common mistakes we make when we do the presentation? We never address as to why the audience should care. Why should you care about this presentation, right? And you also don't upfront tell them what is the goal, And sometimes, even though you have a 15 minutes presentation, you prepare for a 5-minute presentation. Or you end up preparing for a 25 minutes presentation. So it's too few or too many slides. And of course, there are terrible slides. There are all the things we're going to talk about. And then you, in the end, you fail to summarize, or you don't keep your time. So these are some common mistakes that people make. So this presentation is really divided into 3 sections. One is the audience. How do you understand the audience? And then the second part, a major portion, we focus on what are good, effective slides. And then the third part will be talk about how you present yourself at these presentations. As you can see, audience is everything, right? If they're not interested, you have lost it. So you're going to go stand there, you're talking, and they're doing something else. So you lose everything. So know your audience. Understanding who they are is very important. Whether you are talking to a small kids, whether you talk to elderly, whether you're talking to a scientific crowd who knows all about the field, you don't go and define. Like, for example, if I go to a meeting, I'm not going to define what is DNA. However, if I go to a primary school or an elementary school, I have to define what is DNA, what is gene. And the other important thing is cultural. There are many gestures that people consider it very rude. In Malaysia, pointing your finger with the right hand, I'm Malaysian, is considered very rude. Or walking around like this is very rude, because this simply means what? Ramson, did you know that? When somebody does this, what does that mean?
Just certain. Is it aggressive? It seems aggressive.
It's aggressive, but it also means very bad when it says F you.
Oh, really? Oh, I
Yes.
know.
So I see a lot of Americans walking around doing that, okay? So you got to, when you're going to a new country, you need to understand. I always look up what you do's and don'ts, right? What are the gestures you shouldn't use? And so you really need to get yourself into it. You know, as a scientist, I travel all around the world to give lectures. I got to be mindful about their cultural values. I always say you don't go wearing a shorts when you go to Saudi Arabia to give a talk, right? It's not culturally accepted. So that's kind of thing with them. And the whole idea is that you want to gain goodwill and respect, get go. So the audience will say, oh, she's very respectful, and she, we want them to listen to. And immediately you need to disclose what is it in for them. Why should they care to listen to your presentation? So usually we say that start with the bang up openings. That means you pose a question. For example, if I were to talk about my research and I say, how many of you know anyone with cystic fibrosis, right? And then immediately somebody in the crowd knows somebody with the cystic fibrosis. Or if I'm talking about COVID-19, I might ask, do you know anyone with who suffered COVID-19? So you immediately, you sort of, you connect them to your presentation. You can quote an admired figure, there's something special about presentation. By the way, Maricela, Dr. Agudelo, and Marsha, I have my student joining in too. So Fantasia is my student. So, and then you give them the context, why should they listen to, and create rapport. And I give you an example, right? Everybody knows about antimicrobial resistance? Perhaps shake your head, I can see you guys, right? However, when I'm going to give a talk about antimicrobial resistance, sometimes people wonder why should they care about it? This is something somebody gets sick, it's the bacteria, why should it matter? Why should I listen? So let me tell you something. So in USA, right, there are more than, this is 2013 statistics, and the update is, I think it goes up by 3,000 or 4,000. More than 2 million people get sick every year, right? Of them, 23,000 people die from antibiotic resistance infection, okay? And 23,000, you can't quite fathom how many people is 23,000. Let's say 25,000 for 2018, 2020. That is half of FIU. Imagine in 1 year, half of FIU students are dead because of infection from a antimicrobial resistance organism. I mean, we can't wrap our head around 100,000, over 100,000 deaths due to COVID-19, right? And literally, you can wipe out an entire a suburb in Miami with that kind of death. So if you still can't wrap around it, you tell people, an Airbus 380, if you fill it up maximum with the stewardess and the pilot and everybody, it can hold 525 individuals. 23,000 equals to 44 crashes. When we have one crash, we hear about it all week long, 2 weeks long, and then it dies down. And there are 44 crashes, literally about one crash a week in this country, and nobody is talking about it, right? Or very few people are talking about it. And compare that to Ebola. Ebola in 2014 only cost 11,300 deaths. It's a bad, but that's it, done, right? But there are 25,000 people dying every year due to antimicrobial resistance. And look at this. If you look at this slide, you can see that in 2050, they expect AMR, death to AMR, to surpass cancer, cholera, and all the other diseases, including road accidents, by 10 million. So it's really an immense danger in terms of what's going to happen if we don't take note of what's going on with antimicrobial resistance. All right, so that's the bang up opening. So let's talk about slides. So Yesenia, which line do you like? Yesenia, sorry, Bonilla. Which one of the three do you like?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
So I think the second one.
Okay. I think second one is still too small. So I think the first one is better because it's much larger, and old people like me, we want to see it large fonts. Okay. And so what is important is the size matters. So you do not want to use font less than 24 in your presentations. And the title, we will actually talk about it later, it's larger font. All right, so within the tags, not less than 24. Okay, so the next one is, right, Zamira. Which one do you prefer?
I think the first one. The second one is
number one is, number two is harder to read because number two is all capital letters. Never use all capital letters. It's really hard to read. Number three is not bold. So you want bold and sentence format. Okay, so style matters. So let me try Sabrina.
I'd say the first one is the easiest one to read, but even still, I'd probably use something more like regular font because I think that's like Comic Sans. But
right.
The bottom are really hard to read.
All right, so I have a comment about Comic Sans, right? So yes, the first one is much better. Comic Sans is a little playful, right? And you want to be, when you're starting young and trying to make a mark in your field and in your career, I will retain your Comic Sans until you've made it. Okay, so keep your Comic Sans. I do use Comic Sans occasionally, but it's, I'm past prime right now, so I can use it. So you want to maintain that. So the important thing here is, the font matters. So if you look at this times, right, you can see the T is not an equally distributed font, right? So sometimes this makes it very hard to read in a different rooms. So it's better off using where each line is given equal amount of thickness. So Arial, Geneva, Century Gothic are the preferred font. You can also use Helvetica, okay? All right, so what's wrong with this one, Derek Woodard?
Maybe the background color.
Yes, it's kind of a little bit hard to see, right? And there was a time everybody used to black, and the font is also Times. And so, and I take the same slide, and then I'm going to replace it. It's much more gentler to your eyes, and the letters are easier, and you know exactly what the message through, right? In the past, you know, we used to all black background or all dark background. What I learned through my experience is that having very dark background doesn't always work in the rooms. If the room is completely dark, the dark background works. If the room is not semi-dark, dark backgrounds don't work. So you're better off using lighter background. I don't like a completely white background, but you need to have some white around it, but something light works. All right, where are we going? Justice. Which one did you pick?
The top one looks like it's easier to read because the other ones are like really like coming at me and I just can't focus on them.
Exactly, you got it. Because, and the thing is, one thing what doesn't work is the gray colors, right? And then the color contrast, right? And the other thing you have to think about is colorblind people. There are people, a lot of men are colorblind. And if you're, and there are this, you know, we always know about blue, green and red color blindness, right? But there are other combination of color blindness too. So look it up and try and stay away from colors that will make it difficult for people with colorblind to see your slides. So what's wrong with this? Alexis, Ross?
The font or the text isn't all lined up straight. It's kind of all over the place.
Absolutely. So how about this? Let me see. Jillian.
Is it that the picture isn't like spread out enough for us to see it?
Yes. So again, what is wrong with both these slides? This is how when you, it keeps skipping this section. Okay. So you can fix the slide like that. And what is the important point here? You organize your slides. You make sure you align the text, align the figures. I hate when people stretch their figures, it all off, and don't do that. And I'm seeing that more often, and this is not in my slides. I need you to take notes. When you open a file in PowerPoint, it automatically gives you a white screen. Okay? Correct that. Don't do widescreen because not every monitor or every system works for widescreen. So select the 8.5 by 11, whichever that one. Then you don't have to stretch your figures where your text is stretched, the image is stretched, people are stretched, and it really, really bothers me. Okay, so it's so try and not to do that. If you have to stretch, use a cursor and do what you call scaled stretching, which means everything gets stretched at the same time. Okay, so what's wrong with this slide, Emanuela Pierre?
I think the alignment is off for like the class B part.
Yes, the alignment here is off, so we need to again talk about the organization. Okay, so let's look at this. So what's wrong with this, Skylar Brown?
It's too many words on the screen at once.
Yes, what somebody has done here is just cut and paste the title and the abstract from a paper. The question is, do you want the people to read this or listen to you? So don't do this, right? You summarize in few points. And so, and then this is again, you know, if you want to show a diagram, you know, a lot of people, they put this up and they will say, I know you can't see it, but why the hell did you put it up? Right? So if the audience really need to know this slide, make a printout and give it to them so that they can follow your discussion. So here is an example of a slide, and so I'm talking about cystic fibrosis. I have 6 points or 5 points, and all they have is the content, and they're all bulleted. So the question I forgot to ask is, what is the goal of the slides? Jasmine, like that. I would like you guys to turn on the video so I know when you answer me. Jasmine.
Yes.
What is the purpose of what is the purpose of the slides?
To summarize the information that you're saying, and then when you're speaking orally, you're giving the more details.
Exactly.
Like the bullets.
Yes, thank you. So the purpose of the slide is basically it's a prompter. It prompts you or reminds you to say something about that particular point. So what you don't want is long sentences. It's a short reminder, but sufficient enough that, if you have a language issues, you can actually, people know what you're talking about. So you want to make it very short, preferably single lines, but it can be double line, but short, no full sentences. Do you see any period anywhere? You don't see any period anywhere, right? Because these are not sentences. So that's for the slides, how you make the slides. So let's talk about the slide title. Again, what is the goal of the slide title? The goal is to be descriptive. So if I walk into the room 10 minutes late and I look at your slide title, I know what you're talking about. It's not the place to write an essay, okay? But it's short, descriptive. Always go for a single line. Learn how to shrink your title to make it to a single line, or shrink the font size. And you use a font size of 40 or less, if necessary. Don't go below 36. But what is very important, once you decide what is the title going to be, what size it's going to be, what color background it's going to be, you're going to make sure you use the same title from slide to slide to slide. Got it? And make sure you align it. It doesn't matter if you want to put the slide title left end or right end or in the center, but align it. Use the function in PowerPoint to align to the center or side. Do not manually put it in the center. Okay, if you don't know how to use PowerPoint, I highly recommend take the PowerPoint tutorial. You may have used it, you still may not know all the little nuances. I will highly recommend you take the PowerPoint tutorial. So let's talk about the slide content. We already talked about what is the role of the slides. So how many points should we have? 3 to 7 points, maybe 8, right? Not more than that. Again, no essays. And again, it's consistent style. So once you decide, I'm going to use a light purple background, I'm going to use this bullet, and you want to second level bullet, I'm going to use this. You want to make sure all that gets copied and is consistent from slide to slide to slide. And then you rather use figures versus tables. Pictures were 1,000 words. So you always try and convert the tables into figures unless you absolutely cannot do that. Okay, what is wrong with this slide? Jarrell? Is it Jarrell Johnson?
Yeah, the check mark
yeah,
for the different from title is not an error.
Correct. So this should have been a check mark here because this is level 1 bullets. This should be level 2 bullets. So level 2 bullet should be a different bullet from the level 1 bullet. So here's a figure, and you can see the figure is much more clearer, and I'll show you the table where this figure came from. And if you're presenting this figure, you always must explain what is in the y-axis, what is in the x-axis, what are those trains, What does this plus and minus sign mean? What do you mean by this graph? These are all without antibiotics. With antibiotics, you see the increase in activity. I knock out MC, the activity drops halfway. I complement it, the activity comes up or recovered. So you must explain the entire figure when you present. Don't assume people know what it is. So, and then you can also end with a little summary, just to help you to say that, even if somebody missed all your explanation, they can still understand what is the take-home message from that slide. And here's the table, and look at somebody has stretched this slide, right? You can clearly see this slide has been stretched. So you don't cut and paste, don't stretch your slides. You prepare early enough, you get to convert all these. That last figure came from these two data here. And you can also convert these to something easier to read like this. It's the same data. Now I put it in such a way that it's easy to read. The title is clear, and then there's a take-home message. Take-home message, and it's very clear what I'm trying to say. So you always, when you prepare early enough, you don't cut and paste, but you recreate the figures and tables if possible. These days, many websites will give you the figures to download from the papers. So you can download those figures and use them. Okay, so what is important is when you have words and graphics, you have 65% of the audience. You're always losing about 35% of the audience. I'm sure some of you tuned off or turned off, but 65% of you are listening to me, right? But what happens, we don't have any graphics, only have words from slide to slide. We lose more than 60% of the audience tune out. All you have is just words, okay? And so you must remember to make your slide presentable, and that you use a lot of graphics. All right, so when you have never presented scientifically or otherwise, you're kind of lost. When I ask my students to do it for the first time, he says, oh, Dr. Mathee, I've never done slides before. I don't know where to start. So let's talk about the different components of slides. So like you saw, I had my opening slide with my title, my name, who is my mentor, etc. And then the second slide, third slide, I gave you an outline how I'm going to divide my presentation. And then you need to have introduction, that's sufficient information for them to follow your presentation. You should have one slide for hypothesis, and then how you're going to address the hypothesis, either aims or objectives. And then you're going to describe the experiments you did and the outcome from the results, and then end with either conclusion or summary. And then you must have an acknowledgement slide. So this is your opening slide, and I always put, where I'm giving the talk, so I know the next time I open this slide, when was this talk given, right? This was given in 2004 in Bangkok. Okay, so how do you figure out what to put in the introduction? And that is, again, how do you write an introduction for a paper or for thesis? They all, for me, is the same. There's a very simple formula. You know the title, right? And you don't go crazy that you don't know what to do, but you just think about what is the title of your presentation, right? So if the title of my presentation, for example, this one, right? So then my introduction basically should explain the sections, and then it will have all these, this is my outline talk, right? So I'm going to explain introduction in a second. So this is my outline of my talk. And then here is what should I cover in my introduction. So here's the title. And I'm going to say, okay, most people here wouldn't know what is Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So I'm going to have one slide on Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Umpire, what the hell is that? Okay, I'm going to have umpire. Beta-lactam, what is that? So I'm going to have a slide on beta-lactam. Beta-lactam resistance. Okay, I'm going to have one slide on beta-lactam resistance. In cystic fibrosis, oh wow, I need a slide on cystic fibrosis, but somehow connecting them, Pseudomonas and cystic fibrosis. So once you have a very clear title, you can decide what's your introduction going to be. Okay, we are good so far? Shake your head. I can see you guys. All right. Okay, so the other thing is once you present the introduction and you say what is the gap, right, what we don't know, so you have an hypothesis, and there's a link here to teach you how to write a good hypothesis. And you have to decide, is it on your research on a topic or can it be tested? And then whether you can have independent and dependent variables so that you know if these changes that change and or they are independent, okay? And the hypothesis has to be very simple and it says something that will happen because the null hypothesis is something that opposite of it, okay? An example is the messenger RNA levels change in the presence of antibiotics. So I'm going to test this hypothesis. If changes, it agrees with the hypothesis. If it doesn't change, it agrees with the null hypothesis, which it does not change in the presence of antibiotics. I would recommend you go to this website to look up how to write good hypothesis. And then the aims, you know, and it's again very simple, short. You don't have to have several aims at the starting out. Usually, you know, you have 1 or 2 or 3 aims. Again, make it very simple and follow that people can follow. And in this case, you know, we want to map the start sites. We figure out what is the mRNA levels in the presence of antibiotics. And then we're going to compare that with wild type strain and a mutant that has an umpire gene. And this is literally an undergraduate presentation in my lab. So the aim one, right? So when you said, okay, now I'm going to talk about aim one. You must say, what was the rationale for aim one? Why do you want to map the transcription start site? And what methods were used? And what was the results? And what was the mini conclusion that come out of that, right? And you do aim by aim. You don't do all the methods and then all the results and all the conclusions. You want to do aim one, this is what we did, this is our little conclusion. Aim two, this is what we did, this is our little conclusion. So, methodology. I literally hate when somebody write their methods. No, I want to know what was the method. So don't write methodology. You just, for example, you say primary extension analysis, right? And now, if you're talking to audience, scientific audience, you don't waste time explaining what is primary extension analysis. But if you're talking to an audience, they may not know what it is. You need to have a slide that explains the method, the rationale behind the method, okay? But here we just say we're going to grow the bacteria, isolate the mRNA, and design and blah. So explain only if necessary, right? You can use pictures, but don't waste your time putting what temperature and all that stuff, all these details people don't care. They just want to know what was the basic, you know. We grew the spores with hydrogen peroxide and iron, shook it, did dilution, plated it. After 4 days later, we counted colonies, right? It's a very simple. Again, this is a presentation from my lab, from another undergraduate. And just like you don't want to say methods, you do not want to say results. Okay, you want to explain what the actual results we're looking at. So don't make me go like this bear. Okay, so title, make it descriptive, make it concise. Again, go for figures or tables and always end up with a simple conclusion. Here is the same experiment. Here, this is a student showing, and you explain the, oops, oh. Okay, so here is the y-axis shows the fluorescence unit. This is the wild type strain. This is a mutant. The x-axis indicate fragment size in base pairs. And you can clearly see a peak at 119 base pair in length. And the peak is much reduced in this. And one thing is, so in the loss of this gene, loses this peak. In addition, we only see single peak. It's a single transcript. You see how very simple, and we have a very simple conclusion, and also the fact that this mutant lost it. We call it. It requires umpire to express. And, it's very simple to follow, and anybody can follow this experiment. And then conclusion, I told you, you do not want a long-winded sentence. Again, bullets, and you make it very simple sentence. You learn nothing, or you can say additional analysis, but you can also use models to explain your results. And, sometimes the models are more extensive like this. When you use these models, and I have all these 6 points, I will actually animate point by point. I'll start with this one, and then I'll bring back 2, and then I'll bring back 3, and then I'll bring back 4, and so on and so forth. So you can make your conclusion using a model, or you can write simple conclusions. Again, remember, the slides are to prompt you to say something about your finding. And acknowledgement, you must acknowledge for the intellectual, technical, and financial support. You didn't appear in this world on your own. You didn't make it to your undergraduate or through your school on your own. There are a lot of people helped you to be where you are. Your family, your parents, and financial support, you must label them, all right? List them. Your mentors, if somebody worked with you. Your collaborators, if you're working in a research lab. Starting from day 1, write down so I would always tell my students, your first page is list of collaborators. Start with my name, right? I'm your collaborator on this project. And thank you, collaborator on the project. And then you list, each time you talk to somebody, somebody gave you input, you write down, Sabrina provided input on this experiment, right? Because 2 years down the road, when you're writing the paper, you're going to forget Sabrina existed. And then one day, Sabrina looking at the paper, hey, I contributed to this figure. Why is my name not on the author list? So make the list early so that you don't forget people. And lab mates, of course, they make your life good or miserable, depending, but they do play a huge role. Don't forget them, your family. And funding agency, I say pictures always work, but not your pet. And this is one of my group in my first year in FIU. And they all dressed up in sari for one day. So don't forget your lab mates. Okay, so that is as far as all the slides goes, right? So let's talk about some odds and ends. Transition. How do you go from slide A to slide B? And this, you want to know, you want to figure out a question. You pose a question to go from slide 1 to slide 2, right? Why is Pseudomonas aeruginosa important? Then you go to the next slide. If you're having trouble, I will write a simple question at the end that appears when you hit the button. And then you animate it, so you will know that you have to say that. You can use a lot of tools, sounds and animations. As you saw, I use very little of the tools. I do use some animations. Don't overdo it, okay? Some people overdo it, give me a headache, okay? So make sure you use it carefully. If you have a big picture and you want them to focus on one section, you cover the rest. And then you open section by section so they can see it, right? So animations, mindful. I just bounced between one slide, right? Because I was ahead of my slide. So don't bounce. These were the olden days where we have to bounce because it costs us money to make those single slides, right? But now you can just copy and paste the same slide wherever you want that slide to reappear again. So don't go bouncing. Make sure your slide numbers, that's visible for people to see. After 100 slides, they want to know, your slide, that slide with that image, rather instead of saying slide 48 as an issue, okay? Make sure you have slide numbers. And if you're using an image from the website, make sure you provide the link to that image on your slide. In this corner somewhere there, and you put it right there in this corner, or sometimes I put it against this wall. So make sure your source of the image and who, if somebody provided the image, you can say courtesy Ramson Munoz. And so we know that slide was made by Ramson, right? So you want to make sure you acknowledge who the slide. I'm not going to talk about the last one because it will come later. All right, how long have we done so far? How long have I talked?
It's 1:42
It's about
right now.
45 minutes.
Okay.
You still have
yeah,
plenty
I know.
of time if you want.
I want a short break. Okay, do we need a break or can I continue?
You can do we could take a 5-minute, 10-minute break, whatever.
Well, let's do a 5-minute break, or people can ask questions before I go into this section.
Okay.
Any questions in the chat?
No.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Should we, when we do a presentation, should we continuously keep showing the audience like the overall summary of like the slides?
No, no, you don't need to.
Okay, so just do it like one time in the beginning and that's it?
No, your overall summary, you have a summary coming in the end.
Okay.
The conclusion and summary is the same slide.
A question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. A question that was in the chat is, what about references? It should be added to the slides or not?
So yeah, thanks for the question. So I am not in favor of adding references to the slide, except that if you use an image, you reference, right? Or if you're using the figure from the paper, you can just reference their website link. No detailed references. You can say, for example, you can say Bonilla et al. 2015. So we know that this information came from Bonilla's paper, right? You don't want to have, some people will put reference for every line. That's not needed for slides. Okay, it's understood that this information is coming from somewhere. But if I use this figure, then I put here, right? I have the block spot here. So this figure came from there. So you want to be able to acknowledge where they came from. All right. Any other questions?
Bold. Why do we bold everything? Can we not bold?
Okay. Because when you're in a room with 1,000 people, do you think the person who's sitting at the back row can read? Right? And very often you are giving talks in a big conferences. And it's very hard to read when it is not bold and you're sitting at the back. And if you don't want them to pay attention to your presentation, by all means, don't bold it, right? But if you want all the audience in the room, very often I've given a talk in a room that holds 1,000 people. And so for that reason, you bold it. So the idea is some people will bold, right? And then only things they want to pay attention to. So what you do is you use a different color. In fact, I am going to update my slides. Color sections, right? For example, in this case, I've colored this in purple because this is what I'm going to talk about, right? We talked about 3 barriers. Now I'm going to talk about this one. So you can use a different color to show that I'm highlighting the importance. So bold everything and color sections that you want to highlight, okay? Color sections. I need to update my slides, as you can see. All right, so let me talk about you. Can I continue?
You have another question. Should we write the word results on the slide where we show the results, or should we come up with more creative titles?
Come up with a creative title, write about the experiment or the finding of the experiment. So somebody walks into the room, again, they look at results. What results are this person talking about, right? So instead, if you have, say, mapping of human genome, and immediately the person say, oh, he's talking about how they map the human genome. Or, SARS, COVID-19 epidemiology, then we know that, this slide is going to talk about COVID-19. So you want to make sure, don't use methods, don't use results. The only place you do is conclusion or summary, use it. Introduction, again, don't use introduction. Have a title, what you're talking about. Okay, so don't use all those. Any more questions?
No, that was it.
All right, so now let's talk about you, my favorite section. Right? Or maybe not so favorite. You will always have nerves. Whether you or me, it does not matter how many times I've given this talk, the same talk. You know, you always come early and set up and be ready, because you never know when the slides fail. You may have to download from online. I would always send yourself a copy to your email, send a copy to the host, so that your computer fails, you can download from the mail and start talking. So you need to come prepared. And so you come early and set it up and make sure you know how to use your pointers, how to run your slideshow. And the other thing is know your stuff. Remember, you are likely the one who knows most about what is on the slide, which means know everything. If you put something on the slide, make sure you're ready to defend it. Okay? If you can't defend it, if your answer is, I don't know, I do not want to see that on the slide, then why are you putting that if you don't know? So if you put something, make sure you learn. And prepare. You got to prepare, okay? And then wear comfortable shoes and clothes, particularly women. You know, you don't want to trip on your heels, okay? This is not a ball, right? This is a scientific talk. You want to be able to walk across the stage and you know, also wear comfortable clothes. Less is more. Make sure you dress properly. And then you make sure you hydrate, drink a lot of water, and especially 2 hours before, okay? And exercise your mouth and vocal muscles. And take deep breaths from your diaphragm to make sure you calm your nerves so that your nerves are taken care of. So go to a place somewhere quiet, stay there and recover yourself, or rather, you know, get your focus before giving your talk. Dressing professionally is so important. Don't distract, okay? And, you know, people, sometimes women tend to wear very tight clothes. And I say there's a place and time for that, not here, okay? So dress professionally. This doesn't mean you have to wear pants. I'm one person who hates pants. Dress comfortably, dress professionally, right? Also behave professionally. And don't put your hands in your pockets and play with jingle your coins. No pocket billiard, okay? And don't fidget or fiddle. And I remember one presentation and I was in the class, and I went back to school 2 years ago, and the kid had her arms like this. The entire time she's walking around up and down and up and down, and I want to go and pull her hands off, but I wasn't the teacher. So I have to stay quiet as a student, right? So don't fidget, don't fiddle, relax, right? Make sure everything is, you know, natural, okay? And then respect your audience. Make sure you're courteous. Anybody ask questions, be courteous. And I'll teach you how to field the questions, okay? Connect with your audience. So it's important to know your audience. You don't want such audience, right? So we want an audience that listens to you. So make eye contact. And you want to be, and this is what one thing I don't like about the Zoom presentations. I can't make eye contact with all of you, though I keep switching my faces here. And so what happens? When you're in a big room, you walk straight, talk to the group in the front, don't stare, make eye contact, break, you walk to the left, to the audience, walk, make eye contact, walk back, go to the other side, make eye contact, come back, right? And the move has to be very deliberate, not running up and down, okay? You very deliberately small moves without distracting them. At the end of the presentation, you have made eye contact with everybody in the room. I mean, I have been at talks where the speaker speaks to me all the time and as if the others don't exist. Then why give a talk, right? So you want to be able to connect with everybody. Tell a story. Learn how to present your science with like a story. And you know, we always say that, think that you're talking to your grandma and you want to tell her and get her excited about what you're doing. So try to figure out how to tell a story. Smile, okay? You relax and smile and say that I'm friendly. I'm okay to get to know. I'm not going to eat you up, right? So you want to be friendly. And relax and have fun. Giving a talk is a lot of fun. I have fun all the time, okay? So relax and have fun. So planning your talk. Write up your talk. If you have not given a talk in your life, write up exactly what you want to say per slide. Because as you write up, you will realize that you're repeating. So you get to become economical with the words. You can say a lot of things in 15 minutes, right? But you want to be very carefully choose your words, right? You proofread your talk, the slides, as well as your talk. And read out loud what you have written so that if it flows. Because if it flows, it will make sense. And if not, you rearrange the slide and then you can start redoing it, right? So you want to be able to, oh, sorry. This thing is keep blocking. Okay, reorganize the order of slides. That was the last one. Okay. So time management. It's very important that if the talk is 15 minutes, make sure you have 10 or 12 slides, right? Don't have 20 slides. Time your practice sessions every time. Do not go over, because the minute they know your talk is supposed to finish at 1:15, if you're talking past 1:15, people tune out. So if you want their attention, you want to make sure you keep your time. Okay, so you practice with and without audience. Ask your friends to listen to you. Ask your mom to listen to you, your sister to listen to you, so that they can understand what you are talking. And be receptive to their critique. This is so important. Some people will say, no, I did this because, I did that because. No, I don't want to hear that. I'm telling you what didn't work for me. If it didn't work for me, it may not work for others. So you say, thank you, I will consider changing it, right? You don't have to defend your actions. Practice out loud, do not memorize, right? A lot of undergraduates do that. They memorize the talk. The minute I ask a question in the middle, they forget. They have to repeat the last line and restart. Ranson is shaking his head. Right? So a lot of young students do that. Do not memorize the talk, okay? And check the time. If you're running late, you try and summarize. You check the time and you have 5 more slides and you say, oh, I'm almost out of time. Instead of jumping to the last slide and concluding, you're continuing exactly what you planned. But what's the point of checking time? The idea is when you check the time and say, okay, I need to rush and get through, okay? So you want to do that. So how do you handle question and answer? You always start with thank the person. Thank you for the good question. And take responsibility for understanding the question. What does that mean? You repeat the question to make sure you understood what was the question posed. And you rephrase it. You don't have to use the exact phrase, because when you rephrase it, you understand the question better. And and it also gives you a huge advantage. It gives you time to think about the answer. When somebody asks, when you do this, you are buying yourself 1 or 2 minutes to think of a good answer. So let's say you have an answer. Great, you answer. If you don't know the answer, if your mentor is in the room, you say, I do not know the answer. Perhaps Dr. Agudelo know the answer. So now you have referred the question to Dr. Agudelo. Let's assume none of them know the answer. You differ, which means you say, I really don't know the answer. We will talk about it later. Or I can get back to you after checking, okay? It is okay to say, I do not know. It shows a lot of maturity to say that I do not know the answer. And sometimes, occasionally, there are people who come to your talk just to give you a hard time because they don't like your mentor. Okay, and they ask you and ask you and ask you until you want to just pull your hair. You say very calmly, I know I don't know the answer. I'm trying to explain. Perhaps this question needs an answer 1-to-1. Let's discuss later. Let's meet for coffee after the presentation. 99.9% of the time, the person is not there after your presentation. Okay, he's gone or she's gone, right? So defer. That's what you mean by let's talk later. That's deferring. So earlier we talked about odds and ends, and I want to talk about attending the sessions. Why attend? Okay. Very often when you're giving a presentation in a session, and I see that a lot with undergraduates in particular, if your talk, is the fourth or fifth talk, you come in for the third or fourth talk. You miss all the rest. Whether you're preparing, whatever, not doesn't matter. And yet you expect everybody to listen to you. And you didn't have respect for the audience, for the other presenters. You don't expect them to listen to you. So you show respect for the audience and you respect for the other presenters. What helps you? You learn from the other's mistake. You look at the presentation and say, oh my God, that's a lousy slide. Or she shouldn't have said something like that. You can learn from others' mistakes. And then you also get a sense for the audience. How much do they know? How well informed are they? So you get a sense for the audience. Okay, if you have a judges who you're competing in a session, you get a sense for the judges and the moderators. What are they looking for, right? And the other main thing is you prevent repetition. Let's say Hillary goes after Zamira. Zamira just talked all about coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. And Hillary comes and she's talking about the infection and she repeats exactly everything Zamira said. Instead saying, you just heard a wonderful talk by Zamira who presented everything about SARS-CoV-2. So I'm not going to waste your time repeating what she says. So I'm going to start on my science part. You skip all introduction slide, okay? You now got more time. But some people will say that, Zamira just presented this and you got to listen to me again. So don't do that, right? Be able to move forward. And I'll tell you, this has helped, and I've seen my students, my undergraduates do this and get kudos from other visiting faculty. And they recognize the student is so able to listen and tailor the introduction to the audience. Audience etiquette. So how about you as an audience? We talked about you being a speaker and being an audience. Arrive early. Turn off electronic gadgetry. And this is an image I took in one of the presentations in FIU, and you can see how everybody is doing something else. Everyone except she's listening, right? And all these other people are doing something else. And here's somebody who's looking at iPhone. Okay, turn off electronic gadgetry. Okay, don't make noise while eating or otherwise. Don't bring your potato chips for seminars. Okay, they are no. Pay attention, okay? And then stay to the end of the presentation. If you have to leave, inform the speaker, I want to apologize, I have to leave early for a class. So the speaker knows you're leaving not because you can't stand the presentation, but you're leaving because you have something to do, right? And show appreciation. How you fail to show appreciation when you're not paying attention, right? So you clap at the end of the presentation. And the other thing is that if you pay attention, you will ask question. You will find that something doesn't make sense. And there's no question is a stupid question. Only if you don't ask, then becomes stupid, right? Because you can always say, I'm not sure I missed it. Maybe this is too simple a question. Can you please explain this? Why we see this? See how you sort of set the stage to make a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake, right? So that's audience etiquette. All right. So that is so far of the presentation. I'll re-summarize in the end. Any questions so far? No questions. Okay, so let's talk about posters. So posters is no different. Size matters, style matters, font matters, color matters, and content matters, right? We already gone through all these for the slides. Again, you have to pay attention to all this stuff. And usually the title is about above 40 because, okay, before you do this, first of all, wherever you go, wherever you are asked to present a poster, the first question you ask is, what is the poster size, right? And then you go to PowerPoint, click custom size and put in the size of the poster. And that's where you start. And then you start with the title, which is above 40 font, because remember, a poster should be able to be read about 3 feet away. Okay, and the title you should be able to read around 6 feet away or 5 feet away. Okay, so you put the title large, sentence format, and then the name, and then the affiliation can be small, right? If somebody is interested in you, they'll go and look up the affiliation. And then you make sure you select what your main titles like this. And then each section, you put the text inside here. Again, the font matters. And you can have hypotheses and then methods. You can either have one big method, you can have subsections, right? 3-4 sections. And then the results can have 3-4 sections with the image and with some explanation, your summary and acknowledgement. So this is one of the slides. And make sure if you are choosing 3 columns, all these 3 columns are aligned across and aligned in the vertically and horizontally. Make sure all the alignments are taken care of. And then here's another same slide. In this case, I changed the color background and I moved the hypothesis here and the methods here, results here, and summary, and you can have a model. You have acknowledgement. You could also include reference if necessary. Okay, and you see that I've reduced the font size for these 2 because these are the most critical ones. Okay, and here is, I'll give you an example of a poster. Here's a poster, and Brianna, do you like this poster?
Yes.
Okay. How about, let me find somebody else. Jillian Harris, do you like this poster?
I think the poster looks good. I like it.
You like it? Okay. And let's see the next poster. What do you think, Jillian, now?
I think there's more pictures, so I think that also helps and contributes to it. I'm sorry, my dog is barking, so I'm gonna go in another room.
Okay, Alex Fernandez, what do you think? Did I ask you a question already, Alex? All right, let me try Sydney Ambrose. Do you like this poster, Sydney?
Yes, I like it.
Okay. What if I tell you they are same posters? Oops. Come on. This is Zoom. Okay. Oh my God. I apologize, guys. Something is happening. Okay, this poster, I did not like this poster, okay? And this Haroldo Rodriguez is my student, and my name is not here because he had just joined my lab and he was going to go to a conference and he showed me this poster and I'm going, oh, no. This is not going to be my poster. It doesn't have abstract. It doesn't have a lot of things. It is really terrible. So I said, no student of mine going to present something like this, right? So I made him redo the same poster. This is the next poster. It's identical poster, right? The identical data. Now it has abstract, it has figures, and it has hypotheses, and all the fonts are bold, nice images to explain the experimental design. And here's the critical images. You don't have to show every image, and the summary. You see the difference? And the difference is a lot more stark when I show it to you in person. I have these 2 posters in my office, right? You can see the quality of the posters. So you want to make sure that your posters have more images than writing, because all you see here is a lot of writing and just 2 figures and not real any explanations of what these figures are. So you need to make sure that you spend some time deciding what you want to do. And again, pick your colors, plan very early what colors you want, what font you want. So all that must be taken into account. All right, so that's for posters, a very small section because most of the components are the same. So the summary of my oral presentation, that you need to know the 3 Ks, 5 Cs, 3 Vs, and 5 Ps. What are those? What are the 3 Ks? Know your audience, know your objective, make sure you get the key points of your talk. Sometimes people say what you want to say what you have to say what you have already said, right? So sometimes repeating helps. So make sure you remember your key points. If you missed everything, at least I hope you take home this message. That's what you want, the key points. And then in terms of slide, you want to be visual is very important. You know, what does the audience see? Making eye contact, your body language. If you're bored, you don't want to give the talk, people recognize you. What kind of slides you have, and the appearance and attire, all that contribute to 55% of your presentation. Vocal, the quality of sound, how vibrant you are, how much you value, how much is your volume. Don't whisper. Variation, don't look at the slides and talk to the slides instead of the audience. So all that only contributes to 38%, but still a chunk of the things. And the next is verbal. And imagine it's only 7%. The message, what is being said. So for 7%, the rest of it is so critical to get the final 7%. So it's very important that you pay attention. So what about the 5 Cs? How you connect to the audience, how do you connect the slides, right? How concise you are with your words and the points, how clear in your communication, how compelling are you with your story? Why should they listen to you? Why is your research is so important? How compelling, how continual, how do you make these transitions? How well you tell the story continuously. So these are the 5 Cs when it comes to presentation, okay? And then you pace. You have to plan your talk so that you pace it and you occupy the whole 15 minutes or whole 2 hours or 1.5 hours you have, right? And modulate your pitch. Don't go and everybody sleep. Okay, and so you want to pitch properly, and you keep go high and low, and you pause, allow people, audience to take in the information, especially complicated information. Pronounce, practice pronunciation of words that you don't know or you don't know how to pronounce, especially scientific words, and then project yourself, right? You face the audience, speak out, practice. You have to practice to speak out so that people can listen to you know, in a monotonous, and you don't project, and it just, you lose the audience. You know, people lose interest very easily, and all these are very important. Before I go there, the one thing I forgot to tell you is don't use filler words. You know what does that mean? It means you're not ready to say what you want to say. Or you say, all right, okay, you know, I don't know anything. Just tell me, I don't need to listen to you-knows. And all right, and you know, so make sure you don't use filler words. You can sit down, ask somebody to mark, you know, filler words. I had a professor who went for every 5 minutes. And I tried to do how many she did in 10 minutes, I gave up because there were too many ums. So, and all that means that you're not paying attention or you're not prepared. So you're buying time to say things. You just sit quiet. You can pause, look at the slides and present. You don't have to go like a train. You look at, okay, what is next slide? Then take a 1 minute pause and then you continue, or 30-second pause, right? All right, so then, practice does not make perfect, but only perfect practice makes perfect. So you got to practice all the time perfectly to make it perfect. And use the opening to ignite. Remember, I told you background openings, then close with a conviction. And do anybody knows who is Vincent Lombardi? Anyone? No one. So the Super Bowl trophy is Vincent Lombardi trophy, okay? And he's a football player. And Sheryl, I think, is a football player, maybe coach. And Sheryl Sandberg is the CEO of Facebook. And that's what she says. And done. I'm done. You're supposed to appreciate. Show appreciation. All right. Okay.
Use your hand claps. Excellent.
Okay, I think I am done, and I can take more questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Ogena?
Yeah, so when you did the for the poster, you said you used PowerPoint for it?
Yes.
So there's like a way to do it on PowerPoint?
Yeah. In a PowerPoint, you just go first page setup and put the size, and then the whole thing will come up with a big file, and then you start putting in all the stuff. And I'll tell you, if you're working with a mentor, and if you have a mentor who makes good posters, you can ask them for a sample poster.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, and Skylar, yes. Always tell your name, so yeah.
Okay, I'm Skylar. Does each person have to make their own PowerPoint and poster? Or is it one?
For this class, I think we're going to have a group of 6 people, so there will be 1 poster per 6 person, and 1 PowerPoint slide for 6 person. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Derek. I have a question. Could you have bullet points on posters?
You could. An abstract, you can't make a bullet because you submit an abstract, you have to put that abstract. You could have a bullet point.
Okay.
Yeah. Though I don't recommend it all the time. For introduction, it's easier to write a paragraph and put an image, and the others can be all bullets.
Okay.
And a summary, all that be bullet points. Yeah. It looks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Hi, my name's Emanuela. I have a question for the posters. So do we have a section where we put the sources that we use too? I know we don't use it for the PowerPoints, but for the posters that needed for like references?
So I told you that for posters, you can or don't have to use references. It's a choice. Depends on if I'm going to use an image from somewhere else, I will probably have the reference. But if the research is based on your own research, then I wouldn't put any references, because you don't want to clog up the presentation with references. The slide, the poster with references. Yeah. Thanks, Emmanuel. Any more questions?
Hi, I have a question. Samira here.
Hi, Samira.
So I noticed that throughout your presentation, you called on people individually and you use their names as examples of things that they should do. Do you think this is a good way to keep, I guess, the audience entertained or like focused? And also in an audience where you don't really know everybody, how can we incorporate this?
Yes, so I have to tell you, the one advantage of Zoom is that I know your names from the images, right? In a classroom, if I have all of you, I would probably just point a finger at you and I would always say, introduce yourself and answer my question. So, you know, being in a class, like for example, being in this program, there are two important, valuable things that you got to do. Three things I would say. One is get to know your mentor, get to know the people we are working with, Dr. Agadelo, Dr. Mathee, Peace, and Marsha, right? Because these are the people, the more they get to know you, especially if you're here physically, right? You will get to know them even more. And you want them to write you a letter in the future, right? When you need a letter from outside your own institution, this is an opportunity to really get to know one of us. That's number one. Number two, all these people with you right now, maybe your boss. You know, you can either say, oh my God, I remember you in my class. Or you can, and then they look at your CV, oh, she was in my class. I don't even know her, right? So you, by getting to know them, you are creating your network. Remember, more than half the time, somebody gets a job because somebody knows somebody in the place. So creating and developing a network is so important. And hopefully by end of the 4 weeks, many of you will stay connected. It doesn't have to be like, you know, let's go for a movie or let's chat or play a game. You can create your own little face group, you know, FIU 2020. And you guys can, you know, keep track of each other and all the good things happening, bad things happening. And then when you have a LinkedIn account, you invite everybody to come and say something nice about you in a LinkedIn account, right? So that you create and expand your network. And, you know, as we grow in our science, and I go to a lot of conferences. So I literally go out to, you know, all the events besides the talks. I hate hanging out with my own friends at conferences because you'll never get to know the other person. You'll just hug together. So I usually go and meet other people. But when my students come with me, they have to go with me with all the events because that's how they get to know somebody new and some faculty member. You know, you decide to go to, oh, I want to go to Boston University. Oh, yes, meet this person. I know this person, now they know you, right? So it's all about networking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have them all wear a badge.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, Daniela.
Hi, my name is Daniela. I wanted to ask you, what are personal ways that you've stopped yourself from using words like or if you get a little nervous during a presentation?
Yes, you know how you get people to tell you.
That's all.
You tell your friends, you know, just catch me when I say such things. And after a while, trust me, I hear it myself. Oh my God, I use this word too many times, you know, because you're paying attention to what you're saying. But having somebody to tell you, you know how many arms you used? And immediately you wake up to it. Oh my God, I'm using all these arms and ahs, right? These are called the filler words. So that's one thing that you do. And then I always sit, when my student is presenting, I sit at the back. I don't sit in front, right? When somebody else is presenting, I'm sitting in front because I want to see what that person has to say. Because of course, I know what my student is going to say. I will say, slow down, right? Slow down. Because some people will run, say slow down, go slow, right? And then I will have some, you know, signals for you're using filler words, right? So you get people to sort of, you know, so you look briefly at the person and then continue as if nothing has happened, right? So you got to be able to have people. I think most important thing that I learned with my students is to teach them not to defend. I say, you make all your mistakes in front of me, in front of our group. This is family. When you go out, present, you are out among the wolves. So we want to make sure the wolves don't eat you up. So we want to have you ready, be prepared to handle anybody. So we practice a lot with some students. Trust me, I had a PhD student, he had to practice for 6 months his defense. And he got to a point where he can say things like he knew what he's saying. And at the end of the day, what I hear from my other professors, what a fantastic presentation. Only I know how much headache I went through to get him to where he is, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be able to do that, yeah. Yes, Daniela.
Thank you.
Long answer. But we have time, we have a lot of time, so.
Okay, also, when you are presenting, you have to maintain eye contact. Do you recommend walking into the room beforehand and seeing maybe what you can look at and use as a vantage point?
So the eye contact, I told you, triangulate, right? Triangulation. So you go early always, see how the layout, and I mean, as a faculty member, I will tell them to all sit in one area. I don't want them to spread out all over. But you learn to first straight eye contact. You don't look past them, but you don't stare at them. You make eye contact very briefly, right? I make eye contact with y'all. And then you go back, and then you turn and go towards that corner and look at that group, make eye contact, walk back, not turn your back, walk backwards, and then go to this corner, you go towards that group, you come back, and straightforward do that. And you got to do that throughout the presentation. The idea is you don't lose them in the process, okay? And you don't stare at this, if you stare through them to beyond, people know that you are not there with them, right? So you want to make sure they know you are there with them.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Daniel. What other questions do we have? No question is a stupid question, remember that. Okay. You have another question, Daniela? No.
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Okay, so you guys have the form that I sent you. Can you guys pull it out and fill it right now? And send all of them to Miss Masha. And you don't have to put your name on it, let it be anonymous.
They can also upload it into the Google Drive.
Okay.
They're gonna be submitting it for research. Hold on, let me create a folder in the drive for that.
That'd be good. So they are good too. So any question, Dr. Raymond?
Marsha, Dr. Mathee, no, I just had a question for Marsha. I know in the past we have created also a questionnaire for them to fill out, like a review after the sessions, the research sessions. Are they doing that this year for us, for the other faculty also?
No, we have whatever we have. We already have it through the IRB submitted. The same questionnaire that we generally have at the end of the program is what we have.
But remember, since they're not gonna be, those questions were developed based on the bench experience, the research experience within the labs. So the questions are not gonna be applicable to this.
That would have had
program.
to be submitted before. It takes a while for the IRB to get back to you for approval.
But regardless of research, can they just provide a review like they're doing for Dr. Mathee? Can they do it for us also, for me and the other faculty who are involved?
You can create in-house program evaluation on your research component, but in regards to what we already have with IRB, we're only gonna evaluate the F-star students because only they have the informed consent. We have.
Yeah, but that is for more of a research style, Marsha. I think like what I'm doing, we should be able to do that.